Depends on what time period they live in, where they live, what culture they have, and what situation they are in. Mortality is having that sense to ending one's life.
However, on the other hand, mortality plays a huge role on how and why we live our lives.
Sometimes it can make us feel like our life is being timed.
Which led to people to feel the deepest internal anxiety of death and unbelief.
The greatest and the most important challenge is to make our lives as beautiful as we can.
And to accept our destiny of death.
In this documentary, we will touch the theme of mortality in William Shakespeare's Macbeth.
And Khaled Hosseini's The Kite Runner.
Absolutely. The Pashtuns, for the most part, are in control and enjoy a much higher status than the Hazaras. And so, unfortunately, among the Hazara people, mortality is a subject they come up against every single day, whether it's through brutality at the hands of the Pashtun, various massacres that have occurred throughout the history of Afghanistan. So I think on the one hand, not to label all Pashtuns, because there are some good people as well, but for the most part, that superiority that they feel doesn't allow them to, I guess, respect one's mortality.
To your book, The Kite Runner, one of the themes is mortality. Can you explain how you define mortality?
Well, mortality obviously refers to life and death. And in Afghanistan, our history has been plagued with death for years. People dying before their time due to all the bombing, landmines, and all of the things that were left in the wake of war.
Asep, the antagonist in your book, he's a Pashtun that becomes the Taliban leader. He has done merciless sins and he thinks that Hazaras' life are not valuable, and in fact they massacred a lot of Hazaras. What do his merciless killings says about his views of mortality?
We'd like to think there aren't people in the world like Asef. Unfortunately, there are. And we've witnessed them throughout history, people that have no respect for human life and view themselves as superior to everybody. And that attitude that they can destroy anyone who doesn't belong in their particular group. So Asef is representative of, again, people like Hitler who impose their will on others in a very brutal and sinful manner. And sadly, a person like Asef, there's no chance to redeem oneself. We like to think we can be forgiven of our sins and move on and become better people. Asef is an example of someone who will never find redemption. From his perspective, he's a man, I guess, a man of great pride and someone who has always fought his own battles. For Sohrab, it's obviously a very traumatic experience, and then to be cast in an orphanage where conditions are completely appalling. The poor child, he endures a great deal of suffering, and one of his biggest fears that I write about in the book is thinking that he's going to forget his parents. Almost like he's tried to push it aside in a way of trying to deal with the trauma. Oh, absolutely. Amir is a character that many people want to write off midway through the first part of the novel because of his selfishness, his disregard for the feelings of others. He's probably the most conflicted person in the entire novel. And he doesn't learn of Hassan's death until very much later in the novel, after he's gone to live in America. But that coming home, that journey to try and redeem himself when he goes to see Rahim Khan, and when he learns about the death of Hassan, he's devastated. A lot of that has to do with the guilt of knowing how he betrayed him And maybe in his heart he hoped that life would be good for Hassan, which it was for quite a while, but he has to shoulder that burden of knowing that maybe in some ways he contributed to what eventually happens with Hassan.
In your play Macbeth, one of the themes is mortality. How can you explain the view of mortality?
Oh, the view of mortality, death. Well, death in my play Macbeth is common, almost inevitable. The first war shows MacDonald revolting against Duncan, the ruling monarch. Of course, there were massive casualties. And then Macbeth starts to rule Scotland, and death continues, occurring because of him, to keep the throne to himself. Lastly, the play ended with war as well, for the death of Macbeth. So mortality is not given as much importance in the play.
How significant is Duncan's death from the start for Macbeth's request to the power?
Oh, well, King Duncan's death opened the path for Macbeth. It threw everyone into conflict, and that gave him an opportunity to impose his power and make his own way to the throne.
So how the death of Banquo affects Macbeth, especially when Macbeth sees the Banquo's ghost?
Oh, when he sees Banquo's ghost, well, that reminds him of what the witches said, right? And so when he sees Banquo's ghost, he starts to become paranoid, showing his guilt. And he's a changed man now. It's not like he was before. So it's showing a little bit of nervous fear of killing, perhaps. So he's really facing a lot of internal struggles when he sees Banquo's ghost.
In your play, Macbeth says, "Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps at the petty pace, to the last slab of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted falls, the way to dusty death." What is the importance of this quote according to Macbeth's mortality?
Well, of course, at the time before he saw Banquo's ghost, he was fearless about death, right? But then he realizes time is catching up to him. It's creeping in, and he can't avoid it. And so death will one day overtake him, and it will lead to a fruitless end. And he's sensing that. He's going to meet a fruitless end.
After all the killings that Macbeth ordered, he starts to act like the death of Lady Macbeth is not important for him. Can you say about his views of mortality in this example? Does he even respect mortality anymore?
Respect mortality? Well, after the death of his wife, well, this he considered to be just an inconvenience, not worth mourning over. And then when we see how many deaths fall at his hands, he has no regard for death.
Lady Macbeth first instigated the death of Duncan. However, after that she does not want to kill anyone anymore. What does this say about her view of mortality?
Well, for her it was convenient that Duncan was gone. That opened her path to become the queen. So it was worth it at the time, but then that starts to haunt her, and she realizes the role of queen isn't worth killing endlessly, and she starts to become haunted by this guilt, and she starts to become crazy by it.
After Macbeth was informed about the death of his family, he is convinced to kill Macbeth. This shows that Macbeth values the life and death of his family, but still decides to kill Macbeth. How does Macbeth represent his view of mortality?
Well, Macduff's first obligation after the death of his family members would be to grieve, and he made that his first commitment. He had to grieve his family's death. But then, he's not a man who would go to kill, but in fighting the wars and seeing death, men will perform their duty when they have to. But in this occasion, to see Macbeth and to see the end of Macbeth, that would become his mission because of the death that Macbeth imposed on his family. So he was now changed by the experience of death and the issue of revenge that he had to carry out for his family.
Are the characters in your play metaphors of mortality?
Metaphors of mortality. Well, we see so many examples of how, in some ways, life and death is what drives these people, what takes them to their ambitions, what determines their commitments, what determines their obsessions, and not even death will stop them. So they think. They will impose death, impose death, impose death, if it means getting themselves ahead. But where are they all heading? Towards death.